My thanks to Bring Me to Life Radio, and welcome to the Cinema Scribe. Life in a land riddled with injustice, intolerance, and inequality, conditions that many of us can relate to these days, is ripe for change. But the birth pangs of bringing about such reform are often as difficult to endure as the problems that spark their initiation. And to complicate matters further, these ordeals are often felt both across society and personally, compounding the pain and suffering experienced at the individual level. So it once was for a troubled Latin American nation and its citizens, as seen in the new fact-based drama Song Without a Name, Cancion sin nombre. Peru was a nation beset by many problems in the 1980s. Volatile political turmoil, accompanied by terrorist activity, rampant corruption, and runaway inflation, made coping with everyday life difficult, dangerous, and expensive, especially for the poor. Those who lived in the country's rural mountainous regions, such as the native Quechua villagers, had it particularly hard, barely eking out a living selling vegetables and other basic commodities. What's more, their limited educational backgrounds made it easy to take advantage of them. For example, they were readily hustled by unscrupulous employers who convincingly talked them into underpaying jobs or joining radical groups under the promise of finding work. But these employment scams and terrorist recruiting tactics were far from the most horrendous atrocities being perpetrated at the time. As a 20-year-old expectant mother, Georgina Condori, played by Pamela Mendoza, would come to find out for herself. Georgina's story, based on actual events, is indeed a tragic one. To make ends meet, Georgina sells potatoes in a village market, while her partner Leo, played by Lucio Rojas, does whatever he can to earn money, no matter how shady the propositions. Given their limited income and the ever-increasing cost of everything, Georgina quietly worries about what will happen once she gives birth. As it is, she can't even afford prenatal care. But while working at the marketplace one day, Georgina receives what she believes is the answer to her prayers. She hears a radio ad for a clinic in Lima that offers pregnant mothers free obstetric services. She sees this as a perfect opportunity to get the care she needs. Georgina makes the trip to Lima to visit the clinic, where she's examined by a doctor who tells her that she and the baby both appear to be perfectly healthy. He then tells her that all she needs to do is come back when she's ready to deliver. And a few days after returning to her village, she goes into labor. She makes the arduous and now painful journey back to Lima, where she gives birth moments after arriving at the clinic. Exhausted from her trip and the birthing process, Georgina is encouraged to rest while the staff attends to the newborn. But when she awakens from her rest, her baby is nowhere to be found. Georgina asks to see the child, but she's told that the baby girl has been taken to a hospital to ensure her health, a story that proves to be an outright lie. And when the new mother pushes the issue, she's rushed out of the clinic by the staff nurses, unceremoniously told to go home. Distraught and inconsolable, Georgina doesn't know what to believe. She makes repeated visits to the clinic, which is now apparently shuttered. She approaches authorities, nearly all of whom either dismiss her as delusional or obligatorily take her statement with no intention of pursuing the matter further. And Leo is of little help, doing little more than paying lip service to his partner's anguish. Finally, in an act of desperation, Georgina visits the offices of the newspaper La Reforma in hopes that someone will listen to her story. Although initially treated dismissively, Georgina's story gets the attention of reporter Pedro Campos, played by Tommy Paraga. He takes pity on the young mother, realizing that she's being victimized by a self-serving society lacking in compassion and basic morality. He understands her situation because, like Georgina, Pedro is a member of a marginalized community himself. As a gay male who lives a largely closeted life in the face of an extremely homophobic culture, he feels disenfranchised, unable to be himself or to explore his budding relationship with a flamboyant actor, Isa, played by Michael Hernandez. Together, Pedro and Georgina begin looking for what happened to her baby. Before long, Georgina meets other women who experience similar fates. They describe appointments at free clinics not unlike the one Georgina visited, attended to by a doctor matching the description of the physician who took care of her. And they go on to tell how their newborns were mysteriously taken from them without explanation shortly after their births. Based on this information, as well as leads from other sources, Pedro uncovers an infant trafficking business, one in which babies are sold to overseas parents looking to adopt, all with the assistance of a complicit judge, played by Carlos Victoria. Pedro's coverage of the story publicly exposes the ring, but even with that, a crucial question still remains. What happened to Georgina's daughter? Surviving conditions like those that prevailed in Peru in the 1980s is never easy, no matter where one may live. The political, social, and economic turbulence that permeated virtually every aspect of everyday life was itself patently unsettling. But when personal tragedies like the one Georgina faced are added to the mix, they make life innately intolerable. How does one cope? Indeed, why must someone endure such excruciating circumstances? The philosophical among us would assert that there are always reasons, albeit not always readily apparent, for undergoing such experiences. But others are just as likely to contend that no one should have to suffer fates like this. So why do such tragic misfortunes occur? Situations like these desperately demand justice and reform. No one should have to endure such indignities. But if conditions are to ever change, they must be brought into the light of day for all to see. And those caught up in such scenarios must have the wherewithal to expose them for what they are. Bringing such outcomes into being takes considerable courage and effort, initiatives that call for a firm belief in one's convictions to make that happen. As Georgina and Pedro work to uncover the truth of her baby's disappearance, they put their heart and soul into their work. They fervently believe that they can achieve what they set out to do, with a commitment to see it through. And that's crucial in light of what's on the line, both on a personal level, that is, locating the missing children, and on a grander scale, that is, bringing about much-needed justice and reform for society at large. To be sure, the intrepid investigative duo has their work cut out for them, given how skillfully the traffickers have concealed their schemes and the logistics that make it work. For instance, by constantly shifting the locations of their clinics, they manage to stay ahead of inquisitors and victims, an effort fortuitously aided by the complicity of corrupt authorities. They also manage to sustain quite a market for their precious commodity by deceitfully yet successfully convincing adopting parents overseas that they have an ample number of children available for placement, young ones who have been orphaned by the deaths of family members killed in terrorist incidents and other calamities. All lies, but convincing ones for sure. As the film depicts, this is a story that calls for change on multiple fronts. Not only does it plead for breaking up the trafficking ring and appeasing the sorrow of its victims, but it also exposes the ugly homophobic hatred inflicted upon Pedro and Isa, victims of an intolerant, out-of-control uber-macho culture. Both situations call for the plights of the disenfranchised to be addressed, to institute protections for those most in need of it. And by calling attention to such disgraceful social ills, champions of their reform have an opportunity to enlighten the public and push for change. The example these advocates set is one that can indeed inspire us all when faced with ordeals in need of comparable rectification. This fact-based but atmospheric tale of Peru's social, political, and economic turmoil of the 1980s provides a unique take on a shocking news story told from a highly personal, exceedingly inventive perspective. With an excellent lead performance by Pamela Mendoza, gorgeous black and white cinematography, and an ethereal original score, director Melina Leon's debut feature tells a captivating story all its own, while simultaneously paying homage to Latin American political thrillers, most notably Chilean-based offerings like Missing and Spider, as well as tales of minority disenfranchisement and exploitation, such as Mexico's Roma. Admittedly, the film could use a little more backstory for context, and it sometimes tries to do a little too much, with some story threads not fleshed out as thoroughly as they could be. Overall, though, this is a fine initial offering from another promising new talent, a filmmaker who clearly demonstrates a great deal of vision and imagination in telling a story that could have been presented much more conventionally in lesser skilled hands. The film is available for first-run online streaming. Implementing justice and reform is often a difficult and frustrating process. The problems that prompt these initiatives are often so insidious, so entrenched, and managed by forces that are so imperceptible that even the most zealous advocates of these efforts are often on the verge of becoming discouraged. Yet, considering the stakes involved, it's also just as hard to walk away from these campaigns, no matter how quixotic they may seem. It's at times like these when the truly committed must steel their resolve to see matters through, so that those in need of the fundamental fairness they lack may have access to it. All thanks to those who have the courage and fortitude to never give up. I'm Brent Marchant, the Cinema Scribe. Thanks for listening.
A lifelong movie fan and longtime student of metaphysics, Cinema Scribe Brent Marchant is the award-winning author of Get the Picture, Conscious Creation Goes to the Movies, Consciously Created Cinema, The Movie Lover's Guide to the Law of Attraction, and Third Reel Conscious Creation Goes Back to the Movies, all of which provide reader-friendly looks at how the practice of conscious creation, also known as the Law of Attraction, is illustrated through film. Brent maintains an ongoing blog about metaphysical cinema and other self-empowerment topics through his website www.brentmarchant.com. He's also the movie correspondent for the Good Radio Network and New Consciousness Review Magazine and Radio, with additional writing contributions to Smart Women's Empowerment, The Happy Guide, Library Journal, BeliefNet, Vivid Life, New Age News, and Master Heart Magazine. Brent holds a BA in Magazine Journalism and History from Syracuse University. Again, check him out at www.brentmarchant.com.